Hi guys, I want to welcome today to my channel, the one and only Jason Shurka.
Hello, hello.
Jason is one of my big heroes of this time of Great Awakening. Jason, I first found you 2 years ago. It was auspicious that we're speaking today because I found you through your global meditations with Lori. When you first started, yeah. And I did your meditation with you again this morning at 9 o'clock, and it was so relaxing just to see your face on the screen. I didn't really meditate, I just watched you meditate. It was so relaxing just to watch your face be in total peace. And so I found you really through you and Lori. And then what happened was that I heard you talking about your childhood, where you came from, that you're from Great Neck, that you went to, the high school that you went to. And I'm like, oh my God, I know the principal of that high school. So I called the principal and I'm like, do you know Jason Shurka? He's like, of course I know Jason. He's my boy. He loves you. And I'm like, can I get his number? So he gave me your number. And this was 2 years ago before you exploded on the scene. So I remember, I don't know if you remember, but I called you.
I remember our first conversation. I think it was with your sister.
That was our second conversation.
Second conversation. Okay. Well, it was a few years ago, a couple years ago.
It was 2 years ago. It was December. I looked back in my phone yesterday. It was December 16th of 2020 that the three of us, me, Miriam, hi Miriam, Miriam, and you gave us like an hour of your time just to like ask you all the questions. When all the information was so new. But our first conversation, I had called you and you were at Gaia at the studio recording your, so you were so excited. You're like, I'm at Gaia and I'm talking about, all the stuff, the alien stuff and the TLS stuff. And then look at you now, like you really truly have taken such a leadership role. What you have accomplished, Jason, in 2 years is astounding. I just want to really thank you on behalf of humanity, because I'll tell you what, Jason, this is the thing. When you first announced like this age of light, the age of love, introduced me to those concepts, and you're like, it might take 130 years. Do you remember saying?
Yeah.
I was like, no, I want this in my lifetime. I remember thinking, I want this in my lifetime. And I really credit you and attribute the acceleration that we are seeing a lot to your efforts, Jason. Truly, you have created you've created a platform. You have done what your platform's name is. You have unified the consciousness, and you have replaced the old, I'll call it cabal media. This is where the world is going, where the content is pure, wholesome, growth-oriented, spiritual, beautiful. And I just want to say thank you, because I feel like we're at the doorstep of this change. It's not 130 years anymore. I feel like it's any minute now. So tell me your thoughts on that.
First of all, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I want to say one thing before we keep going, because it's important to me to say it.
Okay.
It's just necessary. This work that I'm doing, that you're doing, that a lot of people that we work with are doing, it's not our work. It's not. And I'm not saying that to say that. I'm saying it because it's true. We somehow, one way or another, came here and chose to come here at this point in time, just like we chose to come here in many other points in time. But we chose to come here to do this work in many ways that we don't even completely comprehend. I'm talking about now in different dimensions, how certain things work, where you could do one action, you don't even know the impact that it has. It's almost like that butterfly effect, where the flap of a wing in Taiwan will create a tornado or whatever it is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For anybody that's doing this work, myself included, I think the most important thing that we have to remember, and also balance between, is still honor ourselves as individuals, but we're not the ones doing it. We're not. At the end of the day, we got to ask, where did the thought, take Unified, for example, where did the thought of Unified TV come from? It didn't come from my brain. It came through my brain, right? And then it was like that vessel that created it. But where did it actually come from? And I think that's that, whatever you want to call it God, call it source, call it pure conscious, call it whatever you want. I really don't care what you call it. But that common denominator that connects us all, that all sort of like form stems from, I like calling it the formless. By the way, this book, Forming the Formless, it was the first book I ever wrote.
I have it. It's behind me on my bookshelf also.
So it's this idea of helping us all remember that it's easy to get caught up when we create things and they do well and all that. And then, the ego comes in. It's like, I did this. No, we didn't do it. And I didn't do it. And you didn't do it. We're a part of it, but we're not that source. And I just want to preface with that moving forward, wherever this conversation interview goes, because if we forget that, everything comes crumbling down.
I agree 100%. It's true. I thank you for being that willing vessel, the boots on the ground, the ground crew, the willing participant in the divine plan, because it is all divine will. I so agree with you. It keeps you humble, which is good. It keeps you centered. I have a bunch of questions. Can I start in on them?
Yeah, go for it. Let's just have some fun.
Let's go for it. I wanted to first get into your thoughts, Jason, on the Queen's death.
Okay, I'm glad you asked. Listen, I don't think anything's by coincidence. Let's go to some things I understand, some things I don't. The whole 1,776 days thing with the side of the Q movement and all that, with everything that's going on there, I don't think that's a coincidence. There's obviously something going on, with numbers and plans and things that may be beyond a lot of our comprehension. What we do know is there's something going on here. I'm personally not convinced that it happened yesterday. I may be completely wrong, but instead of sort of giving a conclusion saying this is what happened, I just want to raise up a few points here. Point number one is in June of this year, 3 months ago, you can actually forget DuckDuckGo. You can Google this one, you'll find it. For first search result on every mainstream media platform that wrote about it. There was a golden carriage going through somewhere by that palace. And there was some sort of celebration. It was the Jubilee or whatever it is that they do over there. And the Queen supposedly was in that carriage. And then they publicly played a trick on everybody and said, we were just doing a trick on all of you as like a fun thing. And it turns out that they actually did and created this form of a hologram of the Queen in the carriage. And everybody thought that they were looking at the Queen. And then suddenly everybody looked at the palace and you see her waving from there. And everybody's like, oh my God. So this is a public story. The public story is that there was literally a hologram and everybody literally thought that that was her. And then they openly showed us that they have this technology. It's written about, it's public. And then they showed us, no, she's actually in the palace. Now, my question is, and this is not a conclusion or a statement, it's just a question. If the hologram, and we know that the hologram was in the carriage, how do you know that the hologram was in that window when she was waving also? The fact is you don't. You don't. I don't, you don't, nobody does. But it's possible. So the second I saw that, I'm like, well, wait a second. When we have that dot emerging, and then we can connect that dot to other things that came out back in February and other articles that were pretty much erased and just stopped. The Queen died. Well, again, I'm not saying this is what happened, but it's possible that she wasn't here for a period of time. It's possible that she died on a different day. And it's possible that she died back then when articles started coming out and they called it fake news. And I'm sure that there's a reason why they didn't want that coming out. Now, the question that we have to figure out, and this is too premature in my opinion to figure out, but I'm sure the dots will connect, is what could be the motive, right? So we can come up with all the theories that we want. But if she died back in February, if she didn't die yesterday, what would be the motive on either side? We're talking about the dark side and the light side.
Right.
What would be the motive of holding that back? Because sometimes and I see this often, you see both sides doing the same thing for two completely different reasons. So the light side could hold back the death of the queen. The dark side could hold back the death of the queen, but they have two completely different reasons of why they're doing it. I don't know those reasons yet. I'm sure time will tell, and we'll take it from there.
Well, Jason, have you heard or gone down this rabbit hole that Trump is a time traveler?
What do you mean? I have, but what do you mean by time traveler? Let's talk about that for a second.
Well, they say that there is this technology, like whatever we have, our technology that you and I have, they have like 900 years ahead, like the powers that were, or the powers that be. So I do think that with the CERN technology, all these different things, and the looking glass technology, that they have the technology to jump timelines and to go and manipulate events forward and backwards.
So let's
It's
go
the
to
Mandela effect. You know the Mandela effect?
yes. Let's go to physics for a second. Let's go to the physics that we know in both the physical realm and the spiritual realm, because there's a lot of physics in the physical realm that are completely limited. Like, for example, physically speaking, scientists will tell you you cannot surpass the speed of light. We know that scalar technology, scalar waves do surpass the speed of light. We know that. So there's a lot of confusion over there in terms of how certain things work. Now you're going into quantum physics.
Right.
What we do know, and I'm going to now bridge the gap between the physical and the spiritual, what we do know for an absolute fact, well, I can't say fact, but if you go down these, because it depends who you ask really and what knowledge they have.
Right. There are no more facts. Right.
Yeah. I consider it a fact in my perspective because of certain laws that there are and how we connect the dots between those laws. So there are different timelines, but different timelines I don't consider as past and future. Different timelines means an infinite amount of literal potentials and possibilities and probabilities that could happen at this point in time. So we could jump timelines now, but to go to the past, one of the fundamental sort of teachings, and this actually comes from the Rabbi AA, we call him Rabbi Aleph in TLS. But one of the fundamental teachings when it comes to time travel is, first of all, let's define what time is. Time is a tool used to measure the movement of light from point A to point B. That's what time is. If you don't have point A and point B, time cannot exist because there's nothing to be relative between. So time and space dissolve when you no longer have points to travel between, because you're not traveling from anywhere to anywhere, you're simply everywhere simultaneously. Now, when we talk about the past, again, there are different timelines, but let's go back to the timeline that we know of recorded history in terms of what we can document and see. This was actually spoken about in Disclosure 4. Ray gave the example of the inauguration of President Ronald Reagan about 40 years ago. That was an event in time. What that really means is that was an event of light that's traveling. Light travels at 300,000 kilometers per hour. That means that the experience of that event still exists. If you take 300,000 kilometers per second, per second, I believe, 300,000 kilometers per second, and you multiply that for the past 40 years, that's the distance that the light of that inauguration is from us.
Gotcha.
So now, if we go into the whole scalar wave aspect of it and the whole Hertzian aspect of it, which I have very little knowledge about, but this is where we're moving into with quantum physics, is understanding that we're no longer bound by this physics of the speed of light. You can actually surpass that. That's more of a spiritual thing that we're talking about now. And you could actually travel to the point in time, aka the point in light, where the inauguration of Ronald Reagan exists. Now, let's say we can do that, which we can. There are individuals that can do that. You can go, and this is the fundamental teaching of the rabbi. You can go and you can observe it. You cannot go and change it. That's the main fundamental teaching that he said when it comes to time travel, if you want to call it. Sorry about that. You can go and you can observe it. You cannot go and physically change it.
That makes sense. That actually resonates. Yeah.
That's why I said, what do you mean by time traveler? Because, according, again, to what I know, and I'm not saying this is the absolute truth, it's just what I know and what resonates with me, because it really makes a lot of sense on all levels, physically and spiritually. I don't believe you can physically go back in time and physically change something. You can go back in time and observe. You cannot go back in time and change. Now let's go to the future. The future, again, all probabilities, all timelines exist. But the future in our experience of the physical experience has yet to happen. That's where free will comes in. So if we say the future already happened, that's true and that isn't true, meaning all futures already happened because all potentials already exist. And that's where free will can still exist with you saying that the future already happened, when we acknowledge that all realities exist simultaneously. So from my experience and my knowledge, and also my intuition, this one, anybody that's advanced enough to not just understand what we're speaking about here, but to actually apply it, understands that the only place that they can impact timelines is in this present moment.
Right. Right.
That's why I say, what do you mean by time travel?
Right. I'm just educating myself. I don't fully understand it.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
What I understand is that I follow Q. So there's this book about Baron Trump. I forget the name of it, and it's like there's so many coincidences, and like even the time span between the 1776, that it looks as if they went to the future, and we're like living out something from the future now. Mm-hmm. It's hard to even articulate to you, but it just feels like we're living in a simulation. Like like we're just watching the movie play out. Sometimes. I think that's something else to speak about. A lot of people say we live in a simulation, we live in a holographic universe. Let's talk about what that actually means. I feel like a lot of people say it, right. And it's, well, what does that really mean? It's great to use like nice words and say we live in a simulation. What does it mean? How does knowing that actually impact our lives? So in just a few sentences, because you could write a book, you could write many books about just this topic specifically, but in a few sentences, Alan Watts actually said it the best, in my opinion. This is who I learned this one from in terms of just listening to his lectures and his teachings and all that. And on one hand, we experience life happening to us. On the other hand, life and our experience of life is happening because of us. And then he goes to explain the fact, this is a literal fact that we know. Your eyes, what's the purpose of your eye? The purpose of your eye is to act as an instrument, as a processor to process light into what you perceive as vision, into what you perceive as reality. The purpose of your ears is an instrument to process light, frequency, energy, vibration into what we call sound. The purpose of your nose is an instrument to process light, frequency. It's all processing the same source code in different ways. And the way that it processes it gives you sound, it gives you smell, it gives you touch, it gives you feel, it gives you eyesight and all that. So when people say we live in a simulation, well, yeah, nothing actually exists outside of you. Everything only exists because of your processor's ability to decode the only thing that truly exists, which is light. So it's almost like a computer. On a computer, you have something called source code. That's what websites are. Websites, if you're into computer programming, are building the source code. And then the purpose of the computer, and every computer is a different processor. So one can do something that the other can't, almost like some of us can see auras and some of us can't, because our processors are different. The job of the computer is it has certain components, its hard drive and its RAM and all this computer and technological stuff that takes the source code, decodes it, and projects it as an experience of light that we call a website. Now, how do you change that simulation? A master of the matrix is the equivalent of a master of the computer program. Only one is spiritual and the other one's physical. If you're looking at a website, I could change the website if I know how to reprogram the source code. That's how levitation works. That's how telepathic communication works. That's how all of these things work. They work by those masters who have learned the codes. That's what the codes are. If you know the codes and you know how to reprogram the source codes of the universe, you can reprogram it into the way that you want. That's also why the responsibility of knowing the code
is a very big responsibility. That's why this is not public knowledge right now. Somebody like me and you and everybody that's watching this can learn it, but you have to do the work. We all have to do the work, because with doing the work comes understanding the responsibility. If we were just given, hey, everybody, this is what you do, you'd have a horrible disaster going on in this world.
Yes.
Because everybody's going to play with it without understanding the responsibility that comes with it.
Right.
So there is nobody that's barred from becoming that master. Not me, not you, not anybody watching this. Everybody has that ability. The question is, do you want to do the work and put in the effort in order to get there? Back to the simulation thing, it's all a simulation, because this is all a reflection, an expression, a manifestation of source code being processed through us. When you purify the tool, the body in this case, and its instruments and its processors, you're able to do things that yesterday you thought was impossible. And I think that's what we're all striving to get to.
Absolutely. There's this, like, it comes with a spiritual maturity. When you say doing the work, that's what I hear. It's just, being humble, being grateful, all these higher vibrations that we're really trying to, that's the source code. That's the DNA activation that I'm hearing you say. It's the code is DNA. Do you agree with that statement?
100%.
Right. So
the code is DNA. It's a part of the code, but the quality of your DNA and what parts of the DNA you unlock, the DNA is also a processor. So the code is light. DNA works on light. That's the purpose of a machine like this. This is
right.
That's how these things work. This is an activation of your DNA using light. So the source is light. The DNA is the medium between light and your physical experience.
It's biophotonic. Dr. Sandra always says that. It holds the purpose of the DNA is to hold the light.
Exactly. And the reason why most of us really, I mean, not most of us, but I'll say most of the world, the collective, I mean, you know how much they say DNA, most of it is junk. No, you just don't understand it. There's no such thing as junk. There's no such thing as something in here that doesn't exist for a reason, for the big picture. But I think we've come to the point of saying junk DNA exists because we're still being led by the illusion of separation. We still actually think that you can isolate this from this. You can't. It's all an interdependent system that works together. So yeah, I mean, DNA is huge. I think it's the foundation of our physical existence. Yeah,
and I think that's what this time of ascension really is that our DNA, the lights go on in our DNA, the lights get switched on. And I agree 100% with what you said. We have to be spiritually ready because it could be dangerous. And I've read this in your book, the other book, forgetting the name of your other book.
The Language of Energy, Raising
Up. It's the Language of Energy. It was that our thoughts are everything. Our thoughts really, everything starts, we become player characters of our own life when we realize our creative power exists within our thoughts. So that's doing the work. Like that's how collectively we can all contribute. So my next question, I watched your interview with Ismael.
Okay.
And it was great. It was wonderful. And it was like two worlds coming together. It was like, he talks about this concept of collapsing timelines and like all the timelines merging into one timeline. So like when you met him and the TLS world came together with his galactic world, I was like, this is to me the process of God starting to collapse timelines and all of these great leaders coming together into one timeline. So my question for you, Jason, is what was one of the most important things that you took from that conversation? What did you walk away with saying, oh, that was great?
So Ismael, from our conversation and from other conversations, he has a lot of knowledge. He has a lot of knowledge about history, about a lot of different things going on that I would say it's very, there's nothing new under the sun, but there's a new way of conveying it. And he conveys it in a very good way. You know, I've never heard a lot of the things that he speaks about. So what I love the most about that interview, and I said in the interview also, is the fact that it's like, almost like you're saying, it's merging timelines. We're all here to complement each other. And I saw that very clearly throughout the interview, where it's like, he has things that complements a lot of the work that I've been doing. I have things that complement the work that he's doing. We all have things that complement the work that we're all doing. You have things that complement the work that I'm doing. On private sides, me and you have some conversations, and you talk to me about things that I don't know, and then that leads me down its own rabbit hole, and I watch, So I think to answer that question directly, the most beautiful thing that I got from that interview was more so a message as opposed to something within the interview. It was the theme of how we're all here to activate each other. And we may not understand how, but we're all here to activate each other. And it's beautiful to see.
That's great. That's such a great answer. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to jump into a heavy topic that weighs heavily on me. And it has to do with being Jewish in the Patriot movement, and how there's a lot of talk about, I heard, this is the one line, Jason, that really gets me. When I hear this line, all Ashkenazi Jews, I don't know if you've heard this, says all Ashkenazi Jews are Khazarian.
Okay.
What have you heard?
Okay, let's start with this. Religion divides. Religion as we know it divides.
Yes.
The smart people in power, smart does not mean good, but they are very smart in the way that they do things, understand and know how to take advantage of certain people, nations, movements, things like that. A lot of the people that, I'm not going to name names over here, but a lot of the people that we know by name up there doing certain things are perceived to be Jewish, and they're not. But why do they make sure that they're perceived to be Jewish? Because that's very convenient for them, because they can hide under that blanket. And they also, in the process, it's like killing a lot of birds with the same stone, all in one shot. While doing what they need to do, they also continuously divide the people. Now, I obviously come from a Jewish background. Am I religious? No. Am I traditional? Yes. I do Shabbat dinner, the holidays, things like that, because that's how I was brought up. Does that mean that I'm a bad person? You're a bad person because we were brought up in Jewish families? Absolutely not. And by the way, anybody that says that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say about that. I would say check yourself and rethink your thoughts, because that's what they want. If you're already in that movement of understanding the Khazarian mafia and all those things, you should understand how they work. And
exactly, it's continuing their conversation of division.
Yeah, and it's very funny because on one side they're saying they're so deep in this rabbit hole of understanding how the Khazarian mafia works, and at the same time, the Khazarian mafia is taking advantage of these people, and they don't see it.
They don't see it. It's a blind spot for them.
Listen, there are bad people all over the world. There are good people all over the world too. There are bad people in every religion. There are bad Muslims, there are bad Jews, there are bad Christians, there are bad Catholics, there are bad Black people, there are bad white people, there are bad Asian people, there are bad Spanish people. We're all human beings.
Right.
We play into this division when the label of what we call somebody comes before the fact that they're a human being.
Yes.
And that's what calls for division. That's what causes division. When we say, oh, they're Jewish. No, first of all, they're human beings.
Right.
Okay. And just like there are bad human beings, there are good human beings. Secondary is what do they identify? That's a whole different story. But you're going to find good people and bad people in every religion, race, ethnicity, and all that. To sit here and say that this religion is filled with evil people, I'm going to say it straight out. You got to be very ignorant to say something like that. You have to be extremely ignorant to sit here and say this religion is just bad people. How can you say that?
Right.
It doesn't even, not only does it not make sense, it's like me saying that Muslims are horrible people because terrorists are generally Muslim. What kind of stupidity is that? I have a lot of friends that are Muslim. They're great people. But there are people that I identify with that do other things. So again, to answer this like as simply as possible, we have to stop putting labels before we see the humanness of people.
Absolutely.
And if you really want to go deep down, and this may be hard for some people to understand, and it's a very simple concept. I'm actually reading this book right now. It's called The Way. It's about Kabbalah. And it's just an intro. I don't study Kabbalah. I'm not a Kabbalist in any way, not yet, at least. Maybe one day I will be. It really interests me.
Yeah.
But Kabbalah, from my understanding, inverts a lot of things. It shows you how what we perceive as bad is good, and what we perceive is great generally doesn't have that big of an impact. It's inverting everything. So I want to use that inversion principle for a second to sort of, with this example, hopefully anybody that's watching this can take this example and sort of lead this and bring this into the rest of their lives as well. We look at certain evil people that are doing horrible things in the world. We say they're bad, they're horrible, they gotta go. But we forget the fact that they're actually the reason why we're waking up. So I've heard a lot of people say, but what do you mean they're doing horrible things to children and satanic stuff and X, Y, and Z and all that? Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's absolutely horrible. And that's very, very evil. But why do you think you're waking up? Because they succeeded in hurting you in a place where it hurts. And for that, as much as we don't like them, we got to thank that part of them. Now, to be able to thank them, we have to stop seeing them as them,
right?
Because they're not outside of us. In order to get to the point where we can thank the evildoers that are the reason why we're waking up, we have to see them as the shadow part of ourselves. So just like you are one individual, because in this physical realm, we experience ourselves as me and you. In the spiritual realm, you still have me and you in the forms of different lights and shades of light and all that. But in the core and essence of it all, that light is all connected to the same light.
Right.
That means that they are literally, just like you would treat the shadow part of yourself to say, thank you for the trigger that actually caused me to see the part of me that I have to fix. They're no different. It's just now transcending this physical realm of the illusion of separation and looking at them and saying, okay, well, there is no God and the devil. There can't be this and that in the source of it all, because there's no such thing as source and something else. Source includes all. In our physical realm, we have God and Satan. That's how we experience it. We have to acknowledge the physical realm. I'm not saying don't acknowledge it. Acknowledge it, experience it, embrace it in a way, understand that we're still physical human beings experiencing things in physicality. So we experience separation, we experience time, we experience death. But up there in the big picture where everything really comes from, time is a tool used to measure the movement of light that exists in all places simultaneously. Separation is a way of living practically to identify me as me and you as you, but we have to understand that we're still part of the same body. And death is really just a concept, it's a word used to describe the transformation of life. So it's always important to have both parts of, and it's not both, it's really one and the same. But again, we're living in this world. So I'm going to say the spirit world and the physical world. They're all connected. They're all part of the same exact thing. We have to understand how both work in order to live in this life, at least in your physical body, in the most expansive way that you know how to. So it really all comes down to understanding that we got to get rid of the labels for a second. Use them for practical purposes. Okay, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, you're this, great, no problem. But don't feed into the illusion of what they're trying to get you to feed into, because they are the shadow part of you.
Yes.
And when we shift, they can no longer exist. AKA,
Yes.
when we shift, they shift. Because
yes, that's 1,000% true. I believe that so fully, that when we do our trauma work, inner child work, whatever you want to call it, the inner healing we do creates the outer healing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a great answer. Really, really good, Jason. Thank you. It just feels good because, like, as a Jew, it's so hard to hear that, because most of the systems we're trying to take down, the Hollywood, all this stuff is run by these so-called Jews. And it's just a different category. Just like with the Vatican, I would never say all Christians are the same as the Vatican.
Never.
We never do that. Question
And
for you.
by the way, if you do want to go to certain sources of understanding how the light works and how the dark works, whether you want to call it black magic or magic used for the right purposes, it comes down to a lot having to do with Kabbalah. And by the way, where does the word Kabbalah come from? Kabbalah just means secret. It doesn't mean bad.
Right.
Just decided that Kabbalah or secret is bad, but there's a lot of things that are being done in secrecy that are great.
Right. Like TLS.
Like TLS, like many things that are going on. It's TLS and everything else that's going on behind the scenes. Why are certain codes being kept a secret? Because that would be detrimental to the collective of humanity.
Yes.
If we all knew, say this and it's going to rain, because those things exist.
Right. We're not there yet. We're not ready for that. Yeah.
Books like in Hebrew they call it Sefer HaYetzirah, the book of creation, written by Abraham, believed to me. It's a very powerful book with a lot of codes. The Kabbalah, the Zohar, which is a part of it. All these things, we call them Jewish things, but just so you know, sorry about that. Just so you know, the book of creation, Abraham existed before Judaism existed. Let's just get that straight, okay?
Right.
Abraham didn't know what Judaism was as we know it today, just like Jesus didn't know what Christianity was. Jesus has never seen the Old Testament, and Jesus has never seen the New Testament, and Abraham has never seen the Old Testament. It's two completely different timelines. So literally,
it's a funny point. It's so true.
So Sefer HaYetzirah, the book of creation, is the book of creation. It's not the book of Jewish creation. It's just the book of creation. It's not Jewish codes. It's just codes. Why is it written in Hebrew? Because Hebrew existed way before Judaism existed.
An ancient language.
The Hebrews just adopted the language. That's why we call it Hebrew, but it's not a Jewish thing. It's a thing of creation.
So do you see, Jason, do Jewish people, I see Judaism like this. It's a distinct nation. We've kept distinct over 3,000 years because of the traditions that we follow, the way we dress, the way we eat, all these different things have kept us distinct. I view Judaism as a religion, but also as a way of life. That's how it's a little different for me. So it's this way of life. And do you see the Jewish people carrying a certain role in this age of redemption, in this age of love? Do the Jewish people have a specific role that we're going to play, or it's just going to be all of humanity playing the same role?
We all have different roles. I'm not sure if I would divide it by religion. We all have different roles. We all have different energy. We all have different purposes. And all roles are important. All of the roles are important in order to have something functioning and evolving. So let's say in a school, there's a janitor, there's a principal, there's a teacher. Without all three of those, you're going to have a problem. You're just not going to be able to function. Okay. So everybody has a role, and no role is better or worse than the other role. It's just a different role. So first of all, I want to just say this very publicly. Even if we want to go back and say that the Jewish nation 3,000 years ago had a specific role, I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to accept that in terms of energy and how souls take on certain imprints and things that are also beyond most of our comprehension, including my own. I'm willing to accept that in this physical realm, we can be divided in a united way in order to fulfill certain rules. But the way that the Jewish nation is operating today is a disgrace, in my opinion. It's an absolute disgrace. You go to Israel,
Jason.
they call Israel the holy land. It's the opposite of the Holy Land in the way that they're acting.
The government,
the people, the whole deal. There's nothing holy about that.
What do you mean by the people? The fact that they went along with the whole pandemic? Like, what do you mean?
Look at the people.
That they went along with it?
I mean, everything's been lost. All spirituality has been lost. They're not following anything having to do with the mysticism of the Bible in and of itself. There is none of that. It's the exact opposite. It's completely physical. So
They
Now,
lost the point.
physically speaking,
They lost the plot. They lost the
it's been lost a long time. I don't know what's going on.
I think that's cabal influence because they made us so guilt-ridden, fear-ridden that follow the laws. And we can't, like, all we keep doing is adding more laws to the laws, more stringencies to the stringencies. And I feel
There's
like
a lot of
it sucks
corruption.
it. Yeah,
A lot. And it's not
a lot
just,
of corruption.
not just in Israel, it's everywhere. But if we're talking about Israel,
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
not.
take the kosher industry.
Right.
The second you put a kosher stamp on Coca-Cola, please get the hell out of my face. You
Right.
can't do that. You cannot do that. The second a rabbi says, bless on your Coca-Cola, what are you talking about? You can't bless on something that's toxic.
Right.
Bless poison. So it's a business.
It's a business.
It's the business.
The inner workings. I've heard stories. It's so true. It's so
now
true.
Again, I have a problem with that. I'm not against Judaism. I'm not against Israel in terms of what it stands for. I'm against the way that it was brought up. I'm against the true people that are behind it. They're not Jews. They're people that wanted World War III. Look what's going on.
Right.
Before the formal creation of that state, of that country, Palestinians and Jews were chilling.
Yes.
They were doing great.
Yeah.
Everything was fine.
Well, that was the hardest red pill for me to swallow, was that the Zionist movement was really satanic. And the state of Israel, the government is the most.
Zionism does not mean.
It killed me, Jason. It killed me.
It sucks. It sucks. But there's a difference. There's a difference. People think that if you're a Zionist, you're a Jew. No. That's not
right. True. Distinction there must be made.
Not true. That is not
must
true.
Be made.
Actually, I did an interview with David Icke like a year ago about in Hebrew they call him Shabtai, something Shabtai.
Yes.
In English, David calls him the Sabbatean Empire. Okay, those people are not Jewish.
Not Jewish, Erev Rav, whatever you want to call them. They infiltrated. And they
infiltrate Israel, and they infiltrate the United States of America, and they infiltrate the royal families of Saudi Arabia. It's all over the world. And it's a game. The question is,
they made the world hate Jews. And then they hide. It's anti-Semitic. They cry anti-Semitism if you come up against them. It's the perfect plan.
Well, let's go back to what we said before. I don't agree that they made the world hate Jews. What I would say, if we go back to the union part of them being our shadow, they just showed us what we're capable of. They didn't make us do anything. That shadow part, almost like the counterproductive part of our ego. Are you going to call your ego they? No, it's a part of you. Okay, so you're again, it's like as above, so below, as within, so without. It's the same exact thing.
Okay.
So that part of us showed us what we're capable of. Today it's Jews, tomorrow it could be Black people. It was Black people, it was slavery.
Right.
So it's just showing what we're capable of. And I think the moment we stop blaming it on they and start looking at, well, you can't piss me off. I can allow you to piss me off.
Yes.
But you cannot do that to me. I need to allow that to happen. We've collectively allowed all of these things to happen.
Right. And it dissolves the victimhood status. I don't want to be a victim. You're right. I do not want to be a victim.
There's no need. You cannot be a victim when you understand the simulation at its core.
Right. We have the power.
You're the one creating it.
We have the power. Can I ask you something else? I know time is escaping me.
All good. Go for it.
Okay. The yeshiva that you and Ray spoke about in Disclosure 4. What are your thoughts, Jason, on there was two Batei Mikdash, there's two holy temples in Jerusalem. Do you think that they're part of the bringing of the third? Do you believe that there will be a third Beis HaMikdash? And what are your thoughts on the Beis HaMikdash?
I have a question for you just to clear something up. Do they say that the Mashiach, the Messiah, is going to come with the third one? Is that what they say?
That's what they say.
That's what they say. Okay, so here, I just want to confirm that before I gave my answer. I think that the third Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, whatever you want to call it, it could possibly come to fruition and exist. But if it does, it's gonna be when religion is transcended. The days of Messiah,
that's a good answer.
It's not the third Holy Temple of the Jewish people. It's the first Holy Temple of humanity.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe said that, I think this is a Chabad thought, that it's,
Oh, I've never heard that.
that the whole world will unite around the third Beis HaMikdash. It's not just the Jewish people. I've heard this before, and I love this answer. I'm so happy you said that.
Interesting. Okay, no, that's sorry. I've never, I don't know anything about Chabad or anything, but there are always these synchronicities, and that's how you know it's true too, when you hear a lot of people coming from different perspectives and pretty much saying the same thing without knowing about each other.
Right.
There's a truth there, because now we're tapping into something together. So yeah, I definitely think that if there will be a physical place, it's going to be the holy temple of humanity, of life.
Will it be in Jerusalem? You think it'll be in Jerusalem?
I think it will, not because of Jerusalem, but because of the foundation stone.
Right, the foundation stone.
Yeah, the foundation stone has nothing to do with Israel. The foundation stone existed before there was a country called Israel. The foundation stone.
Is it for all the galaxies, Jason? The foundation stone is for, because Ishmael says we're the hub. So I think we're the hub because of the foundation stone.
Yes, so to that, my knowledge definitely intertwines with Ishmael's on that one, where if you go to TLS even, they'll tell you that not only is the foundation stone the energetic hub and center of planet Earth, it's the energetic hub and center of creation as we know it.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Awesome. Now, what's interesting is, again, now back to this book, because I started reading it again.
You're loving that book.
I love this book. So it speaks about, and again, it's super preliminary, I'm still learning, but in Kabbalah, it talks about something called the vessel, the light, and the shattering. Okay, the breaking of all of that, which in a way is like the Big Bang. The only difference is that it's not a random occurrence of events. It's an explosion of light, meaning the intangible becomes tangible, spirit becomes matter, spirit becomes physical in a blast of light of divine intelligence, of God.
Right.
The foundation stone is, to my knowledge, where that started. So creation never began. Creation is an ongoing process because energy cannot be created or destroyed. But creation as matter that we experience it does have a beginning and an end, because all form is formed and then goes back to formless. So this form of creation that we experience, again, to my knowledge, started out of the foundation stone. That's what in Hebrew they call it Even Hashtiyah. It's where the foundation of everything else comes out of, from the spirit world into the physical world. And that's why I think it has nothing to do with Israel or Jerusalem or any of that. It has to do with that specific geographic location.
Do you think that, I heard this alluded to by you, that you might be part of this mission to recover? I heard that Even Hashtiyah is the what am I forgetting? What was on top of it where they held the luchot?
Underneath Even Hashtiyah, underneath the foundation stone, there are certain things that are buried.
Right.
There's the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant. That's what I'm looking for. So
yeah, not just that, but there are a lot of things buried under there.
Right.
And to answer your question, I can't say that that's, from what I'm told, that's part of a plan. Can that plan change? Anything can change.
When is that plan? Do you know when that might start, that recovery process?
I think we got some time, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think something like that. Listen, if it is going to be me as one of the individuals or a part of leading something like that, I can tell you for sure I'm nowhere near ready. You can't even, no, you can't. I mean, like, you can't get close to something like that.
No.
If you're not prepared, it will literally electrocute
you. It'll kill you.
Yeah, you can't steal it. Yeah, that's not how these things work. Like, you get too close without being prepared.
You're fried. You're toasted.
You're so from what I've been told, this was shared, I think, in Disclosure 3 is what you're referring to. So first time I was told that was actually on February 6th of 2020 in that meeting that I had with TLS. That was like the initial start. That's what I was told by the rabbi, actually, where there was certain people that to do things. If you pay attention, you go back to interviews, I was never allowed to speak about that until it came out in Disclosure 3. But I always said that in that meeting, there were certain things that were told to me about certain things that I have to prepare for. And they helped me with that preparation of eat a certain way, stop doing this, start doing, just guidance, without interfering with like my process. But listen, things can change, what happens if I'm not here tomorrow? I don't know. So like, it's just a part of the plan. It's
Well,
just
Jason, there's a Mashiach ben David and a Mashiach ben Yosef.
interesting. I think so long as the world will see that person as Mashiach, we're not ready. We're not ready.
I think there has to be a leader. I think
That doesn't mean that leader is the Messiah. But I can tell you one thing. You want an indication of when it's going to happen? Step one, the critical mass, call it, not everybody, but the critical mass has to understand that person, whoever does that, is not the Messiah.
Right.
So if we think that person's the Messiah, that's not going to happen.
We are each, the way I've come to realize it is that each one of us is the Messiah. It's a collective.
We're part of the same thing. We're part of the same place.
Right.
We come from
it's
the
a
same
consciousness. Place. Yes.
We're all manifestations of the same exact place. I'm serious. Like it's crazy. Yeah. We all come from the
same source. We are one. We are one.
When we're sitting here and saying that person is the Messiah and this person is the hero.
Right. Right.
No way.
It's a level playing field. So
you want to get to listen, for an event like that to happen, what that really means is everything changes overnight. Technology from thousands of years ago resurfaces. We see it, we experience it with our own eyes, everybody. And nothing is secret anymore. Fully transparent. Communication with extraterrestrial life is part of your day-to-day. It's not out of the ordinary anymore.
Right.
For something like that to happen, we have to evolve spiritually.
In our lifetime, Jason? In our lifetime?
If we choose so, it could happen tomorrow.
Okay. That's why these conversations are so important.
100%. The question is when are we going to stop externalizing our power? Stop looking for the Messiah.
Savior.
It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So we want to get to that point and be responsible with the things that are going to be released and revealed. No problem. Do the work. I'm doing the work. You're doing the work. We all have to do the work. But do the work. This isn't about somebody saying, okay, they're ready. Let's give it to them. We're the ones that say we're ready. And we do that through our actions.
Right.
So it can happen in a year. It can happen in 10 years. It can happen in 30 years. Based on the time, to answer the first question that you asked, based on the timeline that we're currently at. Last I checked, which was about 8 months ago in terms of me asking the question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Whenever I'm 48 years old, whatever that year is. So that gives that's a 23-year period from now. That can change. That can, and by the way, that's not a set in stone sort of thing. That's just a conversation that I had. And that's what Ray told me in the past. He said, I believe that based on X, Y, and Z, this is the probability of what's probably going to happen. However, it can happen in 2 years. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen in 10 years. It can happen even after that. It can happen in 80 years.
Right.
It's up to us. That's the point.
So what are,
it's up to
end this conversation, this beautiful conversation, what are 3 things people can do to contribute to the evolution of our consciousness and accelerate the age of love?
I'm going to repeat what Ray said in multiple disclosures and what in the next disclosure, which is with a woman from the organization, they call her the Black Widow. She says this as well. So they influence me a lot in terms of how I see the world. And this is why I'm sharing it. This is literally coming from them. Only I'm going to share it as that messenger. Number 1, first and foremost, wake up every morning and ask yourself, what's one thing I can do? Just one. That's a good deed to help somebody else that does not benefit me directly. One thing, do one. It could be a phone call to somebody you haven't spoken to. It could be a visit to somebody you haven't seen in a while. It could be helping somebody cross the street. It could be a homeless person that needs water. I don't know. It could be a blessing that you do in silence for somebody and they don't even know. One thing per day that you do to help somebody else. That's number 1. Everything else is an offshoot from there. Take care of yourself physically and spiritually. First and foremost, take care of yourself physically. You will be able to take care of yourself spiritually a whole lot easier if you're in good physical standing in your body. So if you're not feeling well, if you're not eating well, if you're doing things that are hurting you, take care of yourself. The number one, the second thing I would say after the one good deed a day, do your best. We can't always do this, but do your best to do everything with joy. A small thing with joy is worth 1,000,000 times more than doing something grand without it. So the second thing, joy. Do everything with as much joy as you can. I will say that although I'm saying this, there are some days where I don't practice this. I do my best. Okay,
Right.
so we all have to do our best. And it doesn't mean that if you miss a day or if one day you get pissed off or whatever it is, you fail. You didn't. You're just
Right,
a human
it's not
being.
all
Well,
us.
it's all good. Okay, we can't be all lovey-dovey every day. Some days you're upset, some days you're disappointed, some days you just want to go crazy, and other days are great. Do your best to be as joyous as you can in the tasks that you're doing whenever you're doing them. And lastly, which is what I said already, take care of your body. If your body is in good standing, if you focus on physical healing, what comes with that is spiritual well-being.
Yes.
You can start focusing on your spirituality. You can start focusing on the tasks of your soul, of what you came here to do. You can see things clearer. You can hear things more when you're in a clean physical vessel.
Yeah, and you just reminded me that when we say refuat nefesh, we say refuat guf. We say it together. When we're wishing somebody a healing, we say a healing of the spirit and the body. They're always in tandem.
100%.
Jason, this was awesome.
I had a great time.
Thank you so much for giving me your time. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate you. I love you so much. I appreciate all the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm open to doing this whenever you'd like.
God should give you the strength to continue.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too.